Hey, everybody. I'm Carla Calgaritas with the Horseman Symposium. We are so excited you've joined us today. I am here with Ryan Rose, who is one of the presenters at the symposium. We'll tell you more about that later, give you some more details. But first, I want to take advantage of the opportunity to have someone like Ryan here and ask him some really important and intriguing questions that I think all of you will get a lot out of. Ryan is also a Road to the Horse official Road to the Horse competitor. And I believe the Horseman Symposium is the week after that. Yeah. So you're either going to come in hot telling us how you won, or you're going to be telling us what happened, right?
Let's not talk about it. Yeah.
All right, Ryan. So
it'll be fun either way.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about horsemanship because it is a topic that some people may not even know how to define it. If you had one word that you had to use to describe horsemanship, what would that be?
I would use the word connection.
Okay, explain that.
So I think horsemanship gets thrown around kind of loosely because I categorize it differently. Like to me, there's horsemanship, there's horse training, there's taming, different areas. So to me, horsemanship is like you're working on building a connection with the horse where they're understanding it's kind of the language you're establishing between the horse and the human.
Okay, perfect. So with that in mind, why do we need to care about connection? Why is that important?
So if you just jump right into horse training and trying to teach them different, like when I think of horse training, I think of a lot of like the different body postures that we want a horse to be in or the different movements we want their body to do. You can do that, but if the horse isn't connected, meaning we're using the horsemanship to get the horse to understand all the aids that you would use to ask them to do different maneuvers. If they're missing that, you're going to have anxiety behind it. So there's going to be a lack of understanding on the horse's part. And if you just use repetition to teach it and you just drill on it over and over again, you're going to have a kind of a robotic look to the horse, or you're going to have an anxious, tense look as they do it. And so I think for the horse to put full effort into what we're asking them for, they have to have a connection first. Then we can kind of work on the horse training side of it, of getting their body to be able to do the maneuvers we're asking for.
Okay. So when we talk about horsemanship, what are you known for? Let's give the audience a little context. What is your sweet spot when it comes to horses?
So I'm known quite a bit from my YouTube channel of working with really difficult horses or horses that are having a dangerous behavior. And so I think one of my specialties is being able to read the horse and understand where the horse is at. Because it's like, let's say the horse, the rider wants it to go forward and the horse starts backing up and then rears up. Well, most people would see that the horse is just not going forward. What I see is the horse is finding relief backing up and rearing. And so I would find a way to make the horse's idea uncomfortable and show the horse that the relief is actually thinking forward versus trying to just make the horse go forward.
Okay. Speaking of make, when you watch modern day performance horses, either online or in person at a show or an event, what stands out to you the most?
I'm personally interested in ranch versatility, and so I'm kind of interested in the cutting. A friend of mine was competing in the cutting, and one of the things that really stood out to me was how the expression on his horse and how connected it was to the cow in the cutting. This was in a recent futurity that he was riding in, and his horse was just super hooked on. And at that particular show, a lot of the horses are pretty young, and so it's pretty easy for them to make mistakes and get disconnected if they get out of position. And so I was really impressed with how well connected his horse was.
Okay. There are lots of different ways to get something done with a horse, right? Lots of ways to teach trailer loading or clipping or flying changes or whatever. But not all the methods that are out there are good for the horse. Why does that matter? And what changes for a horse when the person really understands them?
For me, it really goes back to like horses try to be very obedient. So you can find a lot of ways to like make a horse do something. And so that's why you can have 100 different ways to do it and the horse can figure out all of them. But I think the best ways, or my favorite ways of going about it, is to get the horse to understand our idea. Because if they're understanding what's going on in the process and understanding pressure, that means we're kind of going their way and we're understanding where they're at and reading their behavior and looking for relaxation and confidence and understanding. And then we're asking the horse to understand our cues and what we're asking them for. And when you build that connection, you have a much more relaxed, comfortable horse. And then when that happens, the result is that you can do less and the horse will still have responsibility to do the maneuver you're asking for. Versus if the horse isn't really connected to your idea, the rider has to be like really handy and really be particular about how they're asking for it, because if they're off at all, the horse is going to do something different. Whereas when the horse is super connected, it's like you can kind of just be sitting there and the horse will take a hold of the idea and they'll seek out that thing.
That's an amazing feeling when that happens.
It is. That is like my favorite thing to experience with a horse. And it can be something that's difficult, like trying to cut a cow or holding a cow or doing liberty. But it could also be as simple as I'm wanting them to stand still to put fly spray on them or to saddle them. And I don't have to put them, tie them or do anything to try to make them stand still. They're just content to understand their job right now is to stand still and not die for grass and just kind of be responsible to stay connected to that idea.
Yeah. When horses can be amazing to work with, but they can also be frustrating for a lot of us. Maybe not for you as much as a professional, but I can speak as an amateur. They can be frustrating, right? How do you recognize when a horse is confused versus resistant, right? And then once you've determined that, how does your teaching approach change?
Yeah, so horse training, it's very difficult. I mean, because we're innately predators, they're innately prey-animals, and so we're just on polar opposites of how we think and what our natural instincts are right off the bat. Plus, they're big and fast and powerful, and we could get injured. It's a dangerous thing. It's one of the things I'll say a lot of times is there's nothing really safe about riding horses. It's like there's a lot of ways it can go wrong. But the more we prepare them and build a connection and a relationship with the horse based on understanding and trust, now we have something that we can rely on in even more of a difficult scenario where something else is happening that's out of our control, and the horse can stay connected with us. So yeah.
Okay. When a training approach isn't working, how do you decide what to change?
I really try to look at it from the horse's point of view. I ask myself, where's the horse at? Which just means to me, if I do less, where's the horse going to go? Or is it going to go faster, slower, up, down, right, left? And I'd really try to work from their perspective. So if they're not getting something, I ask myself, is there anything physically going on with the horse where it can't do what I'm asking it to do? Or mentally, usually there's some lapse in understanding, because I'm a big believer in horses actually want to do all the things we're asking them to do if we can present it to them in a way that makes sense to them. And that's what I think is also really amazing about horses, is they're so willing to do all these crazy things that we ask them to do.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, when we talk to our friends that have horses or your colleagues, a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, he's stubborn, he's ornery, or, she's this or that, mare's this or that. But you just made a point that most horses want to do what we're asking them to do.
Yeah, so they don't start off that way. They don't know that the predator has a good idea, but that's why I like to explain it in terms of like, is the horse finding relief doing our idea? And that sounds really nice, but that's a lot harder. It's not that hard once you really understand it, but if you're working from our natural instincts, it doesn't make any sense. Where like our instincts tell us just pull on the reins and kick them to go and just make them do the things we want them to do, like try to control them. That's like instinctive for a human. And then for a horse, that's going to make them feel more claustrophobic and feel defensive about whatever it is we're asking them to do. So if we can find a way to set it up where our idea is the easy answer. So it's kind of like, I think of it as like we're playing chess with the horse versus like tic-tac-toe. It's like, it's not just here, there. It's we got to have a couple of layers into it,
Strategy, mind
little
game.
strategy
Yeah.
behind it. Like let's say a horse is refusing to go forward over an obstacle. Like the natural thing for a human is to kick them more and try to push them towards the obstacle to show them that's what I want you to do. But if the horse is trying to back away or turn right or left, I might over agree with the horse and say, oh, let me help you back up more. Let me help you turn left more. And then I'll release that pressure back to the obstacle, to wherever that horse is willing to try to be comfortable in that scenario. And then the horse starts to figure out that's where the relief is, even though it previously thought that's where the danger was, that's where it was scary. If you had a person who was like afraid of water and you had them in a pool and you just like pushed them into the deep end, they're no longer going to trust you. Even if they lived through the experience, like they didn't drown, like it would have scared them and they wouldn't trust the person that pushed them in. But that's like essentially what we're doing with a horse that's afraid of doing something. If we just push them through it, they're gonna, even if they do it, they're not gonna have a great experience. They're not gonna want to do it again. It might be even harder to get them there next time. But if we convince them that that's actually more comfortable and we let them work at it and try and build curiosity towards it, horses like to be curious and try new things. And so I think that's where they do like to interact with us in that way, if it's kind of a fair scenario.
Do you think a lot of us maybe confuse that? You talked about going to an obstacle and kind of, adding your leg and saying, let's go, let's go. Do we sometimes think of it as leadership in our own way? Maybe that's why we're doing that, because we think that's being the leader. So what is leadership to a horse? What is a horse looking for from a leader?
Yeah, I think being really fair about it. So if they hit a threshold where they're genuinely afraid to continue, and we try to push in that moment, to me, that would be bad leadership. That would be like no different than human to human. If somebody's trying to make you do something that you really don't want to do, it's like, even if you do it, you're not going to have a good experience and you're going to be looking for a way out. The horse is going to do the exact same thing. So if we can find a way to convince a horse that we're the leader, that's in the yields that we do, moving their body in different ways in easy scenarios, then we can take that into more of a purpose thing, like doing an obstacle or a trail ride or riding on a ranch looking for cattle or something. And if you come across something they're afraid of, well, you have this basis of body control from all these yields, but you also have this rapport that's been built in along the way, because we're allowing the horse, we're setting it up and waiting for them to find the answer, versus just telling them the answer kind of over and over again. It's also similar, like if I drive to your house and I use the GPS every day, I'm always going to have to use the GPS because I'm being micromanaged and told when to turn, and I'm not making a wrong turn. I'm not making mistakes, so I'm not really learning. So we have to kind of allow the horse to explore and make mistakes in order to then see where the correct answer is. And that's where we give them responsibility. And to me, that's my favorite level to get to with a horse, is where they have responsibility to maintain whatever job we're asking them to do.
Okay, so that GPS thing, I'm totally guilty of that, especially in Ocala. All right. Technique. So you work with horses, you also work with riders. Technique, would you agree? Technique can be taught to a rider, but what about feel and timing? Can feel and timing be taught, and what is the importance of feel and timing when you're working with horses?
Yeah, so it's critical, and it definitely can be taught. And I know there's quite a few people that'll say you can't teach feel. I do think some people innately have good feel with things, and some it takes a little more time to work at it, but I do think everybody can learn it. I think of feel is like the balance of pressure. We're trying to, most of the time we're trying to balance a horse and get them to be kind of on center with, they really want to go to the left, and so maybe we're going to end up going to the right a bit in order to get them to go straight. So you have to overshoot it a little bit to end up in the center. And so to me, feel is like Tom Dorrance described it as balancing a broom on your hand. It's like little adjustments that you're constantly making, because if you go too far to overcorrect something, well, then it falls off the other side, if you try to catch it. And so that's something that one of the ways I like to describe it is taking a measurement. Every time you apply 4 ounces of pressure, take a measurement. Did you get no response? Did you get an overreactive response? And then adjust the pressure from there. And then the timing is like when the horse thinks about doing the right thing, if you can release. So I actually start releasing even before their body literally does the thing I was looking for. If I see their thought change, and you kind of can feel it in their muscles, you can see it kind of in their eyes and their expression. When they just think my direction, kind of their body it goes from being kind of tensed up to softening. That's the first moment I'm going to release. And if you release on that slightest try, it encourages the horse to keep trying more and more. So that's where the feel and timing are critical. So I'd rather be early than late when releasing a horse. And then later on, you could hold it a little longer. But those two things are critical. I just think those come with experience. The technique is like the hard skill. That's like, put your hand out here, your rein here, or use your legs here. Those are fairly obvious things that a person can pick up pretty quickly. But that feel and timing comes with experience and putting the hours in. And I think that's where horsemanship can get frustrating, because it does take a lot of time. It's really an incredible amount of time that we put into horses to develop them to the levels we want.
Right. Is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known earlier in your career?
I think probably the biggest thing that's different about how I approach things now compared to, say, 20 years ago would be being able to give a horse more responsibility, which involves us doing less first. It's It's very easy for us to do too much and try to make something happen. But when the horse finds the answer on their own, it's like they got it a lot stronger. It's like a light bulb goes off. And then it saves me a lot of time. I don't have to use repetition over and over again.
Okay. I promised you guys some information about the Horseman Symposium, which is happening here in the Ocala area, March 28th and 29th. It's a really unique event, and I want to talk about that just a little bit. Ocala's got a lot of things going on. This is like the heart of the horse world, really, right? Or at least we believe it is, those of us here. And there's a lot of events going on. There's all kinds of things that are, breed specialties or discipline specialties. But the Horseman Symposium is bringing together a variety of presenters from different backgrounds, right? So why do you think an event like this is important for this community and for others that are coming in from out of town?
So I think the diversity of clinicians is one of the coolest things about the event, because a person can really immerse themselves. All the clinicians are like-minded, and so they're going to be saying kind of the same message, but in different ways, and in different kind of sports or disciplines as they do it. And so whether it's doing liberty or it's dressage riding or it's Western riding, the same messages are going to be coming across, but in all these different ways. And I think that's what makes it really unique. Also, the fact that it's kind of like the symposium idea is that it's like a smaller group of people where they're going to have a lot of access to ask us questions, and it's super interactive. And so everybody's going to be able to really kind of nerd out on all the different horsemanship stuff that they want to talk about that weekend. Yeah,
sounds like heaven. I wanted to ask you, what would be your response if someone came? You said we were going to have the opportunity to ask you questions. So what if someone said to you, Ryan, I want to be the best human I can be for my horse. Where do I start? What do I need? What would you say?
I would tell them to take a deep breath and relax, because one of the things that holds people back the most is the fear of making mistakes. And it's like, there's only one kind of unforgivable mistake you can make with a horse, which is to scare them. And I don't mean you spook them a little bit. I mean, you like genuinely scared them.
Scared them to their core.
Scared them to their core,
yeah.
Where they completely felt unsafe and they were scared. And the only real way that could happen is by putting them in a situation where they're just going to get in too much of a bind, like say tying them somewhere where there's a lot of chaos going on, or doing something way too fast with them. That speed can scare them with how fast things come on. So a lot of people think pressure is like what really scares horses, but a lot of times it's the speed at which pressure comes on that scares them. So shy of that, it's like license to experiment. I'm always trying to get people to make more mistakes and experiment more, because the quicker you make mistakes and learn, the more experience you're going to get and the faster you're going to get there. So like at the beginning of a lot of clinics that I do, I'll tell everybody who wants to learn the most this weekend, and everybody raises their hand. They're all excited. And then I say, okay, what if that means you're going to make the most mistakes this weekend? And they're like, oh, well, I don't want to make mistakes. But it's like, no, you do want to make mistakes, because the more you go try things and learn from them and get better at it, that is ultimately what's going to help a person get to their goals quicker.
So there's a difference between failing and being a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So yeah, it's so easy. We all make mistakes all the time. We have to let that go and not be worried about that, because ultimately that's what's going to hold them back. Okay.
Last question for you, Ryan. It's a 2-day event, Horseman Symposium. And as you said, we're going to immerse ourselves in a world where there's a different way of thinking, perhaps, right, for horses. Something that people haven't heard a lot about in the past, all under one roof from so many different people. So when someone leaves the Horseman Symposium and they go home, and that's always the hardest thing about any learning experience, when you're in a clinic or what have you, and you go home and you have to take those things back and make them your own, right? What is the one thing, when someone has heard your presentation, maybe had a chance to meet you during the event, what is the one thing you hope they commit to doing with their horse when they get back home?
I think it's like what you just said, is that they commit to what they're doing, because it is difficult. And I think sometimes people don't realize how much time and effort goes into it. As a professional trainer, it takes a long time to develop a horse. And if you're just learning it as you go, it's going to take even longer. But you're only going to get there if you put the time and effort in. And so I really encourage people to be disciplined about it and try to be really consistent. And it's like, maybe you don't have 2 hours to go work with your horse, but if you have 10 minutes, use that 10 minutes. Get out there and go play with them, work with them, do something with them. That's still going to move the needle and make a difference. So being committed is one of the biggest secrets to getting good with horses.
Wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us. Good luck at Road to the Horse. We'll see you no matter what happens. We'll see you at the Horseman Symposium. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.